On a summer morning in Fort Worth, a mother hands her toddler to a woman she believes is a babysitter. There is no struggle, no warning, just a quiet exchange at the door. By the end of the day, the child is gone, and the woman never comes back. How does a child vanish in the middle of an ordinary day from a place where nothing ever seemed dangerous? Before we begin, let us know where you're listening from tonight. The morning air in Fort Worth already feels heavy, even though the day has barely begun. It is late August, and the sun is up early, casting pale light across the Spanish Gate apartments on East Seminary Drive. The buildings are ordinary, 2 stories, pale walls, narrow walkways, but they are waking up the way they always do. A car door slams. Somewhere a radio hums low. The smell of coffee drifts through an open window and settles into the warm air. Inside one of the apartments, a small child shifts her weight from one foot to the other, unsure of her balance. Melissa Highsmith is not quite 2 years old yet. Her dark hair curls softly at the nape of her neck. She wears a pink dress that hangs loose at her knees, and white sandals that scuff the floor as she moves. She presses her hand against a chair for support, then looks up curious, steadying herself the way toddlers do by instinct and trust. Alta Apentenko moves carefully around her. She is young, only in her early 20s, but her movements carry the practiced rhythm of someone who has already learned how to do many things at once. She smooths Melissa's dress. She checks the small bag by the door, diapers, a change of clothes, things that feel important in the quiet of the morning. Her shoes are already on. Her shift will start soon. The apartment is modest, clean, lived in. Nothing fancy, nothing neglected. A place meant for people who come home tired and leave early. Alta glances at the clock and exhales softly. Timing matters. It always does. Melissa doesn't know any of this. She knows the sound of her mother's voice. She knows the warmth of familiar arms. She knows that mornings mean being lifted, being kissed, being set down again. When Alta bends and presses a kiss to her cheek, Melissa leans into it, her small hand gripping fabric. "Stay right here," Alta says, gently, more out of habit than necessity. Another woman steps closer, the roommate, a relative, someone trusted. The door is open now, letting in a strip of sunlight that cuts across the floor. Outside footsteps pass along the walkway. Someone laughs. Life moves forward without ceremony. The woman who arrives looks put together. Her dress is white, neat, the kind of clothing that suggests order and cleanliness. She wears gloves, also white, and a scarf tied carefully at her neck. There is nothing rushed about her. She speaks calmly. She stands upright. She looks in every way that matters in this moment, like someone who knows what she is doing. Melissa is lifted again, this time into unfamiliar arms. The child doesn't protest. She doesn't cry. She looks at the woman's face, then back toward the apartment, then out toward the brightness of the day. For her, this is just another transition, another set of hands. Alta gathers her things. The goodbye is brief. There is work to get to, bills to pay, responsibilities waiting. Outside, the heat settles in. The babysitter adjusts her hold on the child and steps away from the doorway. Her shoes make a soft sound against the concrete. The pink dress catches the light. For a moment, Melissa's white sandals swing just above the ground. Then they move down the walkway and out of sight. The rest of the morning passes in a way that feels unremarkable at the time. After the door closes behind the babysitter, the apartment settles back into its usual rhythm. The roommate moves through the rooms, finishing small tasks, listening to the sounds of the complex outside. Children are handed off every day. Caregivers come and go. Nothing about this exchange feels different enough to hold on to. Outside, Fort Worth continues its workday. Cars move steadily along East Seminary Drive. The heat builds quickly, pressing down on the concrete walkways and rising back into the air. By mid-morning, the sun is already high, washing the apartment buildings in flat, bright light that leaves little room for shadows. Inside the apartment, time passes quietly. An hour slips by. Then another. The absence of a child is not yet alarming because it is expected. Melissa is supposed to be somewhere else. That understanding fills the space where worry might otherwise grow. At work, Alta moves through her shift with the practiced focus of someone who has learned how to keep going even when tired. Orders come in, plates go out, conversations overlap. She glances at the clock now and then, thinking ahead to the end of the day, to picking up her daughter, to the familiar routine of returning home together. The thought steadies her. It always does. By early afternoon, the heat becomes heavier, clinging to skin and clothing. Even indoors, the air feels thick. Back at the apartment, the roommate checks the clock again, then looks toward the door. The babysitter has not returned, but that alone means nothing. Babysitters keep children all day. That is the arrangement. She reminds herself of this and continues with her day. Another hour passes. The quiet inside the apartment begins to feel different. Not wrong exactly, but noticeable. There are no small sounds, no movement from another room, no interruptions. The roommate pauses once more, standing near the window, looking out at the parking lot and the walkway below. She scans the familiar shapes, parked cars, a neighbor walking past someone sitting on the steps. Nothing stands out. She steps back inside, telling herself not to imagine problems where none exist. Late afternoon arrives gradually without announcement. When Alta finishes her shift, she feels the usual tiredness in her legs and shoulders, but her thoughts are already moving ahead. She leaves work and drives back toward Spanish Gate Apartments, replaying the ordinary details of the evening ahead. The drive is uneventful. Traffic moves steadily. The city looks the same as it did that morning. At the apartment complex, everything appears unchanged. Cars sit where they were parked earlier. A neighbor is outside speaking with someone else. The air is still hot, the light softer now as the sun lowers. Alta climbs the stairs, keys in hand, already imagining the moment she will see her daughter. She opens the door and steps inside, bringing the warmth of the day with her. Her eyes move instinctively toward the familiar places where Melissa usually is, and she waits for the small signs that always follow movement, sound the sense of another presence in the room. She stands still for a moment, letting her gaze travel slowly across the apartment, taking in the unchanged furniture, the quiet air, the stillness that does not resolve itself. She calls Melissa's name, her voice, even unstrained, as if the child is simply in the next room. There is no answer. Alta walks farther into the apartment, opening the bedroom door, glancing into the bathroom, checking the small spaces where a child might wander. Her movements are careful at first, deliberate, guided by habit rather than fear. She calls again, slightly louder now, her voice carrying through the rooms. Nothing responds. The absence does not announce itself immediately. It settles in slowly, almost politely, pressing against Alta's awareness in layers that grow heavier with each passing second. At first, it is only a sense that something is missing from the room's usual rhythm, then a tightening in her chest. Then the unmistakable awareness that her heart is beating faster than it should, that her breathing has shortened without her. Deciding to hurry it, she turns toward the roommates, searching her face for reassurance. Before she even speaks, already bracing herself for the answer. "Where is Melissa?" she asks, forcing her voice to remain even careful not to let fear surface too quickly, as if naming it too soon might make it real. The explanation comes quickly, now tumbling out with less confidence than before. "The babysitter took her in the morning. She said she would be back later. She has not returned yet. She has not called." Each sentence lands heavier than the last, stacking into something Alta can no longer ignore. The room seems to close in around her. The walls feel closer, the air thicker. Alta moves again, propelled less by logic than by instinct. Retracing steps she has already taken. Opening doors she has already opened. Scanning the same spaces as if repetition alone might summon a different outcome. She checks corners, doorways, the small places a child might wander, even though she knows deep down that this is no longer a question of searching carefully. She opens the door and steps outside, her voice rising as she calls her daughter's name into the open air, louder now, sharper, carrying down the walkway and spilling into the parking lot below. The sound of her voice draws attention. Neighbors look up from where they are standing. Someone asks what is wrong. Another person joins her without being asked, walking the length of the parked cars, peering behind stairwells, scanning the edges of the complex with growing concern. Alta keeps calling. Each time her daughter's name leaves her mouth, it is harder to control the urgency breaking through her restraint. Her throat tightens. Her voice wavers. She listens desperately between calls, straining for any sound that might answer back. Minutes stretch unnaturally. 10. Then 20. Each unanswered call shifts something inside her, pushing her understanding from confusion into certainty. This is not a delay. This is not a misunderstanding that will resolve itself with patience. Something has gone wrong, and the longer she stands there, the more undeniable that truth becomes. Alta turns back toward the apartment and reaches for the phone, her hands trembling so badly she nearly drops it. She has to concentrate to dial correctly, forcing herself to slow down enough to make her fingers obey. When the call finally connects, she draws in a breath and pushes her words through the tightness in her chest, determined to speak clearly, even as fear surges upward. "My baby is missing," she says. The words feel foreign as they leave her mouth heavy, and final marking the moment when waiting turns into something far more frightening. After the call ends, time seems to lose its shape. The sun lowers, casting long shadows across the concrete. More neighbors gather, their faces tight with concern. Questions are asked, but there are no answers to give. No one recalls seeing the babysitter return. No one noticed anything unusual. The morning exchange, brief and ordinary, has already begun to blur in memory. Alta stands near the doorway, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, her thoughts racing ahead faster than she can follow. Melissa's belongings are still inside the apartment. The space where a child should be feels suddenly painfully visible. Waiting settles in, heavy, unrelenting, and unfamiliar. Not the waiting of inconvenience or uncertainty, but the kind that takes hold of the body and refuses to loosen its grip. As evening approaches, one thing becomes unmistakably clear. Melissa Highsmith is not where she is supposed to be, and no one can explain how that happened. The first patrol car arrives while there is still light in the sky. Its tires crunch softly against the gravel at the edge of the parking lot as it pulls into Spanish Gate Apartments, drawing the attention of everyone standing nearby. Conversations stop mid-sentence. People step back instinctively, creating space as the officer gets out, his movements calm, practiced, careful not to rush ahead of the facts. Alta watches him approach, holding herself upright through effort alone. She answers questions as they come, her voice steady in tone if not in feeling. Her daughter's name, her age, what she was wearing, when she was last seen. Each answer pulls something tight in her chest, but she keeps speaking because speaking feels like the only thing still within her control. The officer listens closely. He writes things down. He asks the roommate to repeat the details of the morning handoff. Where exactly did it happen? What time? What did the babysitter look like? What was she wearing? Did she say anything unusual? Did she arrive on foot or by car? The answers are precise but limited. The woman wore white, a dress like a nurse's uniform, gloves, a scarf. She sounded calm, professional. She took the child and walked away. No one saw a vehicle. No one noticed which direction she went once she left the walkway. That absence becomes important very quickly. Within the hour, more officers arrive. Flashing lights reflect faintly off windows and windshields as the sky darkens. The apartment complex fills with quiet urgency, voices kept low, movements purposeful. Neighbors are asked to remain nearby. Names are taken. Doors are knocked on, one by one, as officers begin to canvass the building and the surrounding area. Alta remains close to the center of everything, rarely sitting, rarely still, answering questions whenever they come, but never fully turning her attention away from what is happening around her. Her eyes move constantly from officer to neighbor, from one end of the walkway to the other, as if vigilance itself might summon reassurance. Somewhere inside her is the persistent, irrational belief that this moment can still correct itself, that someone will suddenly point and say they have just seen Melissa nearby, that the situation will resolve if she remains alert enough, present enough, unwilling to look away. The search begins nearest the apartment and spreads outward in careful increments. Officers check stairwells, first shining flashlights into shadowed corners, calling out softly before looking behind doors and storage areas. Others move methodically along the perimeter of the complex, opening dumpster lids, scanning the narrow strips of grass and dirt that run alongside the buildings, places too small to matter most days but suddenly crucial now. Neighbors join in, quietly bending to look beneath parked cars, crouching to peer behind tires, lifting tarps and boxes that have not been touched in weeks. Alta follows when she can, staying just close enough to see, close enough to hear. Each place that is checked and cleared leaves behind a heavier silence. Nothing appears, no sound, no movement, no sign that a child has passed through these spaces at all. As the light begins to fade, the search does not stop, it deepens. Flashlights replace daylight. More voices arrive. The air cools slightly, but the tension does not. What began as urgent activity becomes something more deliberate, now slower and more careful, as if everyone understands that the margin for error is narrowing with each passing minute. By the time night fully settles over the apartment complex, the effort has expanded beyond its original boundaries, reaching into surrounding streets and open areas, carried forward by a growing awareness that this is no longer a brief, Absence to be resolved quickly, but a situation that demands everything it can be given. Additional units arrive. A supervisor takes over coordination. The area being searched grows wider, spilling beyond the apartment complex into nearby streets. Neighbors join in, quietly forming informal search lines, their faces serious, their movements careful. Someone brings flashlights. Someone else brings water. Alta walks when she can, calling Melissa's name into the darkness, her voice growing hoarse. Each time she stops, she listens hard, hoping to hear something, anything that might guide her. Nothing answers back. Later that evening, detectives begin formal interviews. Alta sits at a table answering questions again, this time more slowly retracing the day from the beginning. She describes arranging childcare, the phone conversations, the missed interview, the explanation that followed. She answers honestly, even when the questions make her uncomfortable. Trust, she realizes dimly, is being examined now. The babysitter's name, Ruth Johnson, is written down and underlined. Officers ask if she has identification, an address, a phone number. Alta shakes her head. Everything was handled by phone. The arrangement was made out of necessity, not carelessness. The explanation does not feel sufficient even to her, but it is the truth. Elsewhere, officers begin checking records. The name produces nothing immediately. No address that fits. No employment records. The lack of detail slows everything down. By the next morning, the case is no longer contained within the apartment complex. Search teams are organized more formally now. Dogs are brought in, their handlers, moving carefully through the area where Melissa was last seen. The dogs track a scent along the walkway, then toward the street, then lose it completely. The trail does not continue in any clear direction. That too becomes important. Helicopters circle overhead later in the day, scanning nearby fields and vacant lots. Volunteers arrive from nearby neighborhoods. Church members show up quietly, offering food and support, their concern evident in the way they speak and move. Alta barely notices any of it. She exists in a narrowed state of awareness, answering questions, repeating details, watching the search unfold without truly seeing it. Her mind circles the same thoughts over and over, searching for something she missed, something that could explain how her daughter vanished so completely. The media arrives by the second day. Cameras appear at the edge of the complex. Reporters speak softly at first, careful with their questions, then more directly as the story spreads. A toddler is missing, taken during the day, handed to a babysitter who cannot be found. The details feel unreal when spoken aloud, even as they become headlines. Flyers are printed quickly. Melissa's name, her age, a description of what she was wearing, the pink dress, the white sandals. The words feel insufficient, too small to contain what they are meant to represent. Alta appears briefly before cameras encouraged to speak, to ask for help. She does so because it feels necessary, not because she wants to. Her voice holds steady as she asks anyone who has seen her daughter to come forward. She does not cry. She does not raise her voice. The restraint makes the plea heavier, not lighter. The point where hope and fear coexist uneasily, where every passing hour feels dangerous but giving up feels impossible. We understand the exhaustion that comes from repeating the same information, the same questions, the same prayers, while time continues to move forward without regard. By the end of the first week, the initial surge of activity begins to thin. Search areas are rechecked. Leads are followed and dismissed. Tips come in sightings, theories, rumors, but none lead to Melissa. Each one raises hope briefly, only to let it fall again. Alta remains present for all of it. She answers her phone every time it rings. She waits when asked to wait. She follows instructions when given. She does everything asked of her, believing that cooperation will somehow bring her daughter back. But as days turn into nights and nights turn back into days, a quiet realization begins to settle among those involved. Whatever happened to Melissa Highsmith did not leave behind easy answers. The apartment complex returns slowly to its routines. Cars come and go, children play again. But for Alta, time has fractured. The search continues, but something essential has changed. The certainty that the world is predictable, that children handed to caregivers come home at the end of the day, no longer holds. The investigation remains open, active, treated with seriousness and intent, and for a time that fact alone is enough to sustain hope. Officers continue to arrive. Questions are still being asked. Maps are spread out. Names are written down and revisited. As long as people are moving, as long as someone is still searching, it feels possible, almost reasonable to believe that Melissa could be found nearby, that she might still be within reach, waiting for the right person to look in the right place. And yet, beneath the steady rhythm of police work and the visible concern of the community, another feeling begins to surface, quieter, but no less powerful. It is not spoken aloud. No one names it directly. But it settles into the spaces between updates, into the pauses after unanswered questions, into the growing realization that there are very few solid threads left to follow. A child is missing. The details are scarce. The trail, such as it is, feels fragile, easily broken. Hope does not disappear in this moment. It tightens. It becomes more focused, more desperate, clinging to smaller possibilities as larger ones quietly fall away. Every new tip still matters. Every phone call still sends a jolt through the body. But alongside that, hope now lives a deeper unease. The awareness that answers, if they exist, may not be close at hand and may not come quickly. Time continues to move forward regardless, carrying the search with it, stretching each hour into something heavier than the last, leaving everyone involved suspended between belief and fear, unwilling to let go of either one just yet. In the weeks after Melissa disappears, the investigation remains active, but the rhythm changes. The urgency of the first days gives way to a steadier, more procedural pace. Detectives return to their notes again and again, checking details that have already been checked, asking the same questions with slightly different wording, hoping repetition will expose something that certainty missed. Alta stays close to all of it. She keeps her phone nearby at all times, answering every call, even when the voice on the other end belongs to someone she has already spoken to before. Each conversation begins the same way: confirmation of Melissa's name, her age, what she was wearing when she was last seen, and each one ends without anything solid to hold on to. The babysitter's name remains the center of the problem: Ruth Johnson. Investigators search for records that might anchor it to a real person, but the name spreads out in every direction, attaching itself to addresses that do not fit, employment records that lead nowhere, people who insist they have never heard of the woman described. The more the name is examined, the less substance it seems to have. Alta is asked to revisit the morning again, not once or twice, but many times. She closes her eyes and walks through it step by step, replaying details that now feel dangerously important. The tone of the babysitter's voice, the way she was dressed, the calm confidence with which she took Melissa into her arms. Alta answers honestly, even when she senses judgment underneath the questions. She does not argue. She does not defend herself. She believes that compliance is part of loving her child. Days turn into weeks. Search areas expand beyond the apartment complex, then pull back again when nothing is found. Officers follow tips that arrive by phone and by letter, reports of children who resemble Melissa's stories from people who think they saw something unusual that morning. Each tip carries a brief surge of hope, followed by the quiet letdown when it cannot be confirmed. Alta learns this rhythm quickly: hope rising, hope falling, over and over. She continues to appear when asked. She speaks to reporters when advised to do so, even though each interview leaves her exhausted. She keeps her voice steady, her words careful, asking anyone with information to come forward. She does not cry on camera. She does not raise her voice. She believes restraint will make people listen more closely. Inside the apartment, nothing changes. Melissa's things remain where they were left. Her clothes are folded. Her toys are lined up neatly. Alta cleans around them, never through them. The absence becomes a presence of its own, shaping the space, dictating movement. Certain routines fall away. Others become fixed, almost ritualistic. Birthdays arrive quietly. Alta marks them privately, noting the passing of another year without answers. She calculates Melissa's age automatically now, adding one more year each time, imagining milestones that go unobserved. School, friendships, ordinary moments that should be happening somewhere. As months stretch into years, the investigation changes again. Detectives rotate, supervisors change. The case remains open, but it no longer commands immediate attention. Files are updated less frequently. Phone calls come farther apart. Alta notices even when no one says anything aloud. She adapts without choosing to. Alta begins to make calls of her own, following leads that never reach official channels. She contacts organizations that assist families of missing children. She sends photographs, She answers questions from people who promise to keep looking. Each conversation reinforces the same truth. Persistence matters even when results do not follow. Our community understands this kind of endurance. The way a parent learns to live inside uncertainty without ever accepting it. The way hope becomes quieter but no less real. We know that time does not heal this kind of wound. It only teaches a person how to carry it. Years continue to pass. The world around Alta changes. Technology advances. Neighborhoods shift. New families move into Spanish Gate apartments. Some neighbors remember Melissa's disappearance clearly. Others know it only as a story passed along. Alta never allows it to become distant for herself. She keeps Melissa's name active. She keeps asking questions. She keeps believing that answers exist even if she cannot see them yet. The case is eventually labeled a cold case, a term that sounds final but is not meant to be. It means there is no clear direction forward, not that the search has ended. For Alta, the distinction does not matter. Cold or not, her daughter is still missing. And so she waits, not passively, not quietly, but with a vigilance that does not fade. She watches the world for signs of change. She listens for anything that might break the silence. Because unanswered questions, she has learned, do not disappear on their own. They wait. Nothing changes all at once. When the shift comes, it arrives quietly. For years, Alta has learned not to expect sudden breakthroughs. She has learned that answers, if they exist, tend to surface slowly without announcement. So when the phone rings, one ordinary day, and the voice on the other end asks questions, she has answered many times before. She does not immediately think this moment will be different. The caller is careful, polite. He explains that new tools are becoming available, tools that did not exist when Melissa disappeared. He speaks about genetic databases, about how families are sometimes able to find connections where records failed. He does not promise anything. He does not use the word closure. He simply asks whether Alta and Melissa's father would be willing to participate. Alta listens without interrupting. Her instinct is to guard herself against disappointment, to keep hope measured and contained. She has been disappointed too many times before to let her expectations rise unchecked. Still, when she agrees, she feels a shift inside her. Not relief, not excitement, but something closer to cautious attention. Jeffrey Highsmith, Melissa's father, submits a DNA sample. The process is simple enough. A small box arrives in the mail. Instructions are followed. The package is sealed and sent back. It does not feel momentous at the time. There is no ceremony attached to it. Just another step in a search that has stretched across decades. Time passes again. Alta does not wait by the phone. She has learned better than that. Days go by, then weeks. Life continues in the way it always does, carrying uncertainty alongside routine. When the call finally comes, it does not bring immediate clarity. Instead, it introduces possibility. There is a match, the voice explains. Not a direct one, something more complicated. A connection that suggests a relationship but not enough information to draw conclusions yet. The language is careful, technical, filled with terms that take time to absorb. Alta writes things down as she listens, even though she is not sure what they will mean later. She asks questions when she can. She listens closely to what is said and to what is not. A genealogist becomes involved. Someone trained to work backward through records to connect dots that are not obvious at first glance. The work is slow and methodical. It requires patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to sit with uncertainty. Alta recognizes these qualities immediately. She has been practicing them for years. Old records are revisited. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, public documents that exist quietly waiting to be examined in a new context. Names appear. Locations are traced. Threads begin to form where there were none before. Alta is informed of progress in measured updates. Each one brings a mix of hope and restraint. She allows herself to feel cautiously encouraged, but she does not let herself imagine outcomes. Experience has taught her that imagination can be dangerous. Law enforcement becomes involved again, this time with renewed focus. Melissa's case file is retrieved, opened, studied with fresh eyes. Details that once seemed insignificant are reconsidered. Timelines are reconstructed. The babysitter's alias is examined in light of new information. For the first time in years, the case feels active in a way Alta recognizes immediately. Not rushed, not chaotic, but deliberate. Our community understands this kind of moment, the fragile balance between hope and self-protection, the way a parent learns to brace for both answers and silence. We know that reopening old wounds is sometimes the only way to let light reach them. Alta waits. She does not push. She does not demand timelines. She has learned that pressure does not speed truth along. She keeps herself steady, focusing on what she can control, answering questions, providing information, remaining available. The investigators work quietly. They cross-reference data. They consult specialists. They confirm and reconfirm before sharing anything. The process takes time, and no one pretends otherwise. When Alta is finally told that the next step involves making contact, her reaction is not what outsiders might expect. There is no rush of joy, no tears of relief. Instead, there is a long pause followed by a single question. How sure are you? The answer is honest. Nothing is guaranteed. This is not certainty yet. It is direction. Alta nods even though the person on the phone cannot see her. Direction, she knows, is more than she has had in a long time. Preparations begin quietly. Conversations are had about expectations, about possibilities, about the importance of caution. Alta listens closely. She understands that whatever comes next may not resemble the resolution she has imagined during long nights of waiting. She agrees to proceed anyway, because after all these years, standing still feels like the greater risk. The search, dormant but never abandoned, begins to move again. Not loudly, not publicly, but with intention. Somewhere, the silence that has held Melissa's name for so long begins to thin, and for the first time in decades, Alta allows herself to consider that the question she has lived with for so long may finally be moving toward an answer, whatever that answer turns out to be. The first contact is made without ceremony. There is no dramatic knock on a door, no sudden confrontation. Instead, there is a message sent through a social platform most people use for ordinary conversations, family photos, birthday wishes, updates about daily life. The words are careful, measured, written, and rewritten before being sent. A name is used, Melissa Highsmith. On the other side of the screen, the woman who receives the message pauses. She reads it once, then again. Her immediate reaction is not recognition but suspicion. She has lived long enough to know that strangers do not usually arrive bearing truths. She assumes at first that this is some kind of mistake, or worse, a trick. The exchange unfolds slowly. Questions are asked. Details are offered, small ones at first, then more specific. A birthmark, a date, a place. Each piece of information lands with weight pressing against a story she has lived with for decades. Alta is not present for these conversations, but she is aware of each step as it happens. She is told what is being said, what is being asked, what is being doubted. She understands the hesitation immediately. She has learned that truth, when it arrives unexpectedly, often feels threatening before it feels comforting. When the woman finally agrees to meet, it is with conditions, neutral ground, no assumptions, no expectations. Alta agrees to all of it. She would agree to anything that allows the process to continue. The meeting takes place quietly, without cameras, without public announcement. The setting is simple, a church, a room chosen for its privacy rather than its symbolism. Alta arrives early. She sits with her hands folded, her posture composed through sheer force of will. She has imagined this moment in countless ways over the years. None of those imaginings feel useful now. When the door opens and the woman steps inside, Alta recognizes nothing at first. She sees an adult, a stranger, someone with a life already lived. The gap between what she hoped to see and what stands before her is almost unbearable. They look at one another cautiously. Time stretches. The room holds its breath. Introductions are made. Names are spoken. The words sound strange in the air, disconnected from the weight they carry. There is no rush toward one another. No immediate embrace. Just two people standing across from each other, trying to understand what this meeting means. Alta studies her face, searching for familiarity not in features but in something harder to define. A gesture, a way of standing, anything that might bridge the distance. The woman listens. She asks questions. She pushes back gently when things do not align with what she believes about her own life. Her resistance is not hostility. It is self-preservation. Alta answers patiently. She has waited too long to demand belief. Eventually, law enforcement steps in to formalize what cannot be resolved through conversation alone. Arrangements are made for testing, Explanations are given about the process, about what results can and cannot prove. Everyone involved understands the gravity of what is being asked. The waiting returns familiar and unwelcome. When the results come back, they do not arrive with flourish. They are delivered plainly, directly, with the kind of certainty that leaves no room for interpretation. The match is conclusive. The relationship is confirmed. The truth settles into the room slowly. Alta feels it first in her body, a release she did not know she was holding back, followed immediately by a rush of emotion so intense it nearly overwhelms her. She closes her eyes briefly, grounding herself before looking up again. Across from her, the woman absorbs the information differently. The confirmation does not feel like resolution. It feels like rupture. Everything she believed about herself, about her past, about the people who raised her shifts in an instant. There is no celebration, no sense of victory. Only the quiet recognition that a lie has been undone and that truth, however necessary, comes with consequences. In the days that follow, the woman confronts the person who raised her. The conversation is difficult, heavy, with years of unspoken tension. When the admission finally comes that she was taken, that the truth was known all along, it reframes a lifetime of confusion and pain. Alta learns of this later, not from the woman herself, but through investigators. She listens without interruption, understanding that justice and healing do not always arrive together. Legal limitations are explained. Time has passed. Statutes apply. Charges may not be possible. The explanation is factual, restrained, but it lands hard nonetheless. Alta absorbs it quietly. She has learned over decades that the absence of punishment does not erase wrongdoing, but it does complicate closure. What matters now is not what the system can or cannot do. What matters is what has been restored. Months later, Alta sits beside her daughter in a courtroom, watching as a judge listens to a request that feels both simple and profound. The woman who was once called something else asks to reclaim the name given to her at birth. When the judge approves the change, the room reacts before Alta can. Applause rises, spontaneous and sustained. Alta feels tears on her face before she realizes she is crying. She reaches for her daughter's hand, grounding herself in the reality of the moment. The name is spoken aloud, Melissa Highsmith. It does not erase the years that were lost. It does not undo the damage done, but it restores something essential, the right to be known for who she truly is. Alta understands finally that this is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a different chapter, one that will require patience, boundaries, and grace. Mother and daughter do not suddenly become what they might have been. They begin instead with what is possible now: conversation, shared time, careful steps forward. Our community knows this truth well, that reunion is not the same as restoration, and that healing does not arrive all at once. We know that love can survive separation, but it must be relearned slowly in the light of truth. Alta looks at her daughter, grown, changed, present, and allows herself at last to stand inside the answer she has waited for so long to hear. Not everything has been made right, but the question that shaped her life has finally been answered. Life does not settle immediately after the truth is known. It reshapes itself slowly, unevenly, in ways that are not always visible from the outside. In the weeks following the confirmation, there is a strange quiet that settles over Alta's life. For so long, every day has been oriented around a single question: where is Melissa and what happened to her? Now that the question has an answer, even if that answer is complicated, the structure that held her upright for decades begins to loosen. She wakes up some mornings unsure of what she is supposed to be doing next. Melissa, too, moves carefully through this new reality. The confirmation of her identity does not feel like a reunion scene from a storybook. It feels more like standing in unfamiliar terrain without a map. She carries two histories inside her now: the life she lived, believing one version of herself, and the life that has suddenly been revealed to her. Neither one disappears simply because the other exists. Their relationship begins not with grand gestures, but with small, deliberate choices. Phone calls that last a little longer each time. Conversations that circle around safe topics before edging closer to harder truths. Alta learns quickly that love in this context must be offered without demand. She listens more than she speaks. She allows silence to exist without rushing to fill it. Melissa asks questions when she is ready, about the past, about the morning she was taken, about the family that searched for her. Alta answers honestly but carefully, understanding that information must be absorbed at its own pace. There are moments when Melissa pulls back, needing space to process what she has learned. Alta respects that distance even when it hurts. Our community understands this phase of healing. We know that resolution does not erase trauma, that answers do not automatically bring peace. We recognize that rebuilding trust, especially trust interrupted by loss, takes time measured in patience, not milestones. Legal realities remain present in the background. Investigators explain again the limits imposed by time and statute. The absence of prosecution feels unfinished, like a sentence that trails off without punctuation. Alta feels the weight of that injustice, but she also understands that anger, if left unchecked, will consume what little space remains for healing. Instead, the family chooses to speak out, not loudly, not recklessly, but with purpose. They share their story with others who are still searching, emphasizing persistence over certainty, hope over outcome. Melissa listens to these conversations from a distance, at first unsure how much of herself she wants to place into public view. Gradually, she begins to claim pieces of her identity on her own terms. She uses her birth name. She introduces herself as Melissa. Each time she says it aloud, it feels more real, more grounded. Not because it erases what came before, but because it aligns with something deep and undeniable inside her. Alta watches this transformation with a mixture of pride and restraint. She understands now that motherhood at this stage looks different than it once did. It is less about protection and more about presence, less about guiding every step and more about walking alongside. There are setbacks, moments when old wounds surface unexpectedly, triggers that arrive without warning. Melissa navigates feelings of grief, not just for what was taken, but for what cannot be recovered, the childhood that cannot be revisited, the relationship that must be built anew rather than resumed. Alta carries her own grief alongside this progress. She mourns the years she did not get to live with her daughter. She allows herself to feel that loss without letting it overshadow the present. She learns that holding joy and sorrow at the same time is not a contradiction but a necessity. Our community knows this balance well. The way healing often means learning to live with complexity rather than resolving it. The way love can be both fulfilling and painful when history intervenes. As time passes, new routines form. Shared meals, quiet conversations, occasional laughter that surprises them both. These moments do not announce themselves as healing, but they accumulate quietly, building something sustainable. Melissa begins to speak about the future, not in grand plans, but in practical terms. Work, travel, relationships. Alta listens, offering support without steering. She understands now that her role is not to reclaim what was lost, but to nurture what is possible. The story becomes less about what was taken and more about what remains. A bond interrupted but not destroyed. A truth delayed but not denied. And while the pain does not disappear, it changes. It becomes something that can be carried without breaking under its weight. Alta looks at her daughter, present, real, choosing her own path, and feels something she has not allowed herself to feel in a long time. Not closure exactly, but steadiness. The world did not return what it took, but it returned something still alive, and that she knows now is enough to keep moving forward. Years pass, and the urgency that once defined every hour gives way to something steadier, more sustainable. Melissa is an adult, now living her life with intention rather than reaction. She works, makes plans, chooses what parts of her story to share and what parts to keep private. Some days, the past feels close, brushing against her thoughts without warning. Other days, it recedes far enough to allow ordinary concerns to take center stage. She no longer measures her life by what was taken from her, but by what she is building. Alta remains present in her daughter's life, not as someone trying to reclaim lost time, but as someone honoring the time they have. Their relationship continues to evolve, shaped by honesty, patience, and an understanding that love does not require erasing the past to move forward. They celebrate milestones together now, not as compensation for what was missed, but as acknowledgement of what exists. The community remembers the case differently than it once did. What began as a disappearance marked by fear and uncertainty becomes over time a reminder of persistence. People speak of it when discussing long unsolved cases, when talking about how technology can reopen doors once thought permanently closed. The story is no longer only about loss, it is also about endurance. Changes follow in quiet ways. Families learn to keep records. Investigators adopt new tools. Laws are reconsidered, conversations expanded. No single case fixes a system, but each one leaves a mark shaping how the next family is treated, how the next question is asked. Our community knows that stories like this are not rare because of tragedy, but because of attention. Because someone refuses to let a name fade. Because a parent keeps asking questions long after others have stopped listening. Because truth, even when buried deeply, has a way of resurfacing when conditions finally allow it. There are lessons here, though none of them are simple. We learn that trust must be balanced with caution, that asking questions is not unkind, that reporting concerns is not an act of intrusion, but of responsibility, that ordinary people, neighbors, clerks, relatives, often hold the missing pieces long before institutions do. For those listening who have lived long enough to know how quickly life can change, this story offers a quiet reminder. Pay attention to children who seem isolated, to stories that do not quite align, to instincts that persist even when logic suggests silence. Because someone once trusted the wrong person and a child disappeared, and because someone else decades later trusted the quiet pull of unanswered questions and refused to let them go. Alta no longer measures her life by what was taken from her, not because the loss has faded, but because she has learned that survival depends on where she chooses to place her weight. She frames her days around what she did not give up, the waiting that stretched across years, the believing that persisted, even when evidence was thin, the quiet discipline of living with uncertainty, without allowing it to erode her capacity to love. For decades, a single unanswered question shaped every waking moment of her life, and when that question is finally answered, it does not arrive with neat edges or perfect symmetry. It comes unevenly, imperfectly, but truthfully, and that truth offers her something more durable than closure. It offers continuity, the understanding that love does not vanish simply because it is tested by time, that hope can learn to whisper instead of shout, and still remain intact, still remain present, still refuse to disappear. If you believe these voices deserve to be heard slowly and carefully, we invite you to subscribe to this channel. We share true stories not to shock, but to remember to sit with the questions, the waiting, and the quiet strength of the people who live through them. By staying with us, you help make space for stories that might otherwise fade, and for families who are still hoping someone is listening.